Hi, I'm Win, cycling instructor, and this is Fix Your Bike Day. We're working on the Trek 950. Bike's been washed, removed the wheels, I've taken off the tire, the tubes, stripped off the rim tape, used a small wire brush, a brass wire brush, and scrubbed off the rust from the cassettes, as well as on the chain, and the skewers, the skewer handle, and the nuts. But don't use a wire brush on the aluminum parts like your hub and the rim because it's going to scratch it. Instead, use a toothbrush. I've had a lot of success using the Schreiber rim tape, and I buy it by the large roll because it's more economical that way. But there are a number of manufacturers and suppliers out there. I'm just pretty familiar and been really happy with the Schreiber. Alright, so here I've got the wheel truing stand set up, and I've got the front wheel on it, and so I'll first check for up and down motion of the rim, and then left to right. And it's okay if there's a little bit of up and down, but what we're looking for is a lot that would cause a wheel hop. If that's the case, if you can't fix that, then I would recommend just buying a replacement rim of the same brand, spoke count, and valve stem hole size. Tape the two together and just transfer the spokes from one to the other. And you can watch other YouTube videos that post how to do that, or on a good cycling bicycle repair manual. So when I have to true the wheel, I keep the right side of the wheel on my right, and on my right hand I carry a needle nose pliers that has a flat spot on it, and I clench the spoke that I am going to tighten or loosen, and then with my left hand I use a spoke wrench to either tighten or loosen the spoke, but I clamp it with a spoke with a needle nose pliers so that the spoke doesn't twist. Okay, and I'll repeat this until I get the wheel true, and then tighten up all the spokes so that they're at the same tension by ear. Okay, and on the rear wheel, check to make sure you don't have any broken spokes, specifically on the gear side, and then repeat and bring that wheel into true. That should not take too long in this case because the wheel's in pretty good shape, but I will need to retension all of the spokes. Alright, let's get on to putting on the rim tape, and the width of this rim tape is 18 millimeters because I know some of you are going to ask, and that's the width that I use. So I'll start around where the tube valve is, and then run it around and let it overlap by a few inches. And just take your time and try to put in a nice smooth surface without wrinkles or kinks. And this is fairly tough tape, so then you're going to need scissors to cut it at the end, and then run your finger over it just to smooth it out that you have good adhesion. I use a battery operated soldering iron to melt a hole where the inner tube valve goes, and repeat that on both wheels. The rim tape is tough enough so you won't be able to use a knife or scissors to cut a hole. You need to melt it. And so if you don't have a soldering iron, hot nail or a wire will do. Okay, going back to the front wheel, I'm going to lube the hub, and so remove the quick release skewer and put it aside. You're going to need to remove the lock nut on one side of the hub, and then the method I use is once that's off, I'll wipe it down and then keep the axle so it's vertical, and then slowly loosen or unscrew the cone, and then once you have enough space, get some machine oil, and I use SAE weight 30 weight motor oil for this, and put a shot into it, and then tighten down the cone by hand so that the bearings stay in place, and then flip the wheel over and loosen it up again while you're pushing up on the axle so the ball bearings don't fall out, and put another slug of oil in there, and then tighten it back down again and reinstall the lock nut and tighten the cone nut and the lock nut together. To do this, you will need a thin wrench called a hub spanner, and you can buy those from the bike shop or online, and they're inexpensive. The other wrench for the lock nut, you can just use a regular combination wrench or an adjustable wrench. Give it a spin and adjust the tension so it's not too tight or not too loose, and just make sure that the lock nut is tight. You only need to remove or loosen one lock nut. Okay, you don't need to do both. I might add that you can also buy a bicycle repair toolkit, and bike shops and online they have these, and it includes most of the tools you need to get you started, and it's a good way to get a good set inexpensively. Put a drop of oil on the mechanical components of your quick release skewer and on the thread. These parts rarely get serviced, and so adding some oil will help it to move smoother. On the rear wheel, we're going to work with the non-drive side. So same thing, remove the quick release skewer, remove the lock nut, and then loosen the cone enough so that you can get twice the amount of 2 slugs of oil into the hub, and then tighten down the cone, reinstall the lock nut, give it a spin, and then leave this wheel leaning on its side and let the dirty oil dribble out, and make sure that there's not too much slack or the bearings are compressed too much. If there is a problem, then you will need to remove the lock ring on the cassette of gears side so that you can access the cone and the bearings on that side. But first try is just do one side and put a lot of oil in it and let it dribble out, and then wipe up the mess. Okay, I might add that if you are missing the springs on your quick release skewer, or if some of them are damaged, go to the bike shop and just buy the replacements that you need, or go online and buy them. They're not expensive, but they sure make life a lot easier for you. The grease that I use, I just buy at the auto parts store, and it's general purpose bearing grease. You buy the small container, and it'll last about 30 years. So using a paper towel, just wipe off the seat post, and this is the cheap one, and then I'll put a layer of grease on that, as well as put a layer of grease inside the seat tube, and for now that's good enough. Then later on I can make a seat post shim from a Coke can and spread out the seat tube, or just replace the post altogether and put in the correct diameter. Servicing the cantilever brakes, I removed the transverse cable, and I'm taking off one of the holding bolts, and we're going to put some grease on the pivots. And this is relatively easy to do. Just do one side at a time. Pulls out. Once the screw is out, there's a spring that goes into a hole, and using some of the grease, just put it on. And in this case, I dropped the spring, And so pick that spring up, put it back in, and then reinstall it on the bike. There we go. And that happens. So repeat this for the other side and as well as for the front. You might notice that I'm using a Y-shaped wrench. That's a hex wrench that has 3 different wrenches in it, a 4mm, a 5, and a 6. And they're somewhat handy, but you can just as easily use a loose Allen wrench from your own toolkit. On the front, I already removed one of the bolts, and so I'll remove the caliper arm and put some grease on the boss there and then reinstall that. You might notice that on the handlebar I loosened the stem bolt and rotated the lever so it's vertical, and that's so that I can easily service the mechanicals on the shifter without having to move each of the levers. It just makes it easier to work on this way. Okay, so let's get on to aligning the rear derailleur hanger, and here I've got a park tool that does that. These are worthwhile to have. It's not a part of the beginner toolkit, but I highly recommend it because trying to adjust a derailleur where the hanger is not parallel to your gears is just an absolute source of endless frustration. And they're not expensive. I think a park tool is about $60. You can buy a Chinese knockoff brand for, the $30 range, and it costs $20 to get it done in a bike shop. Okay, so you do this between 1 and 3 times and it pays for itself. So I highly recommend buying one. And you screw it in tightly into the derailleur mounting hole, and then you set your feeler for the at 0 degrees, or in this case I'm at 270 degrees, which is straight down, and then you rotate it to 90 degrees, which is straight up. And if there's a large gap, and there usually is with a bike this old, it will almost always be out of alignment. Just use the handle of the alignment gauge as a pry bar and bend it in halfway, and then bring the tool back down again and reset the feeler gauge. And so you always move a distance of 1/2, and after you do this about 2 or 3 times, it's going to be pretty close. And so do it in this case I'm working from 270 to 90 degrees, and then I'll work 0 to 180. But I found actually that if you work from 0 degrees and then 180 degrees and you get that straight, then this 90 to 270 degrees pattern is pretty much taking care of itself. But I think this was probably one of the best tools I've ever purchased. Now I've used others, and they're all the same. They're all really good at aligning your wheel. And if you notice, I'm moving the wheel so that just in case the wheel is not true, I'm aligning to the inner tube hole on the rim, right? So no matter what, it's always the same reference. So this will end the video for today, and this will give you enough ideas as if you're trying to resurrect or revive a bike. This will take you some time to complete. So until then, keep on cycling. I'll see you later. And please like and subscribe.